Hello everyone, welcome back to Shonky Lab. I am Elton McManus, and today I am joined by one of the greatest audio producers on the internet today. That is Mr. Jim Moon.
That's somewhat ironic considering I couldn't get my Skype to work.
Yeah, you did. I didn't think of that as I said that sentence, so apologies there. But yeah.
We're running late and it's my fault. I hold my hands up.
No,
Skype's fault. No, fuck it's Skype.
It's Skype again. Is it you'd like to think you could blame Windows and Skype separately, but since that they Microsoft own Skype, then who's to blame there?
It's a horrible 2-for-1 deal.
Oh, surely that should be like an integrated system now. That should be part of it.
You'd have thought so, but it ain't working so well tonight, that's for sure.
God,
2 updates.
God damn it. When was the last time you used Skype before then?
I actually used it the other weekend.
Really?
Absolutely fine.
It just loves to fuck
a
with us.
fortnight ago, yeah. It's like, oh well, that's the wonder of technology and the wonder of updates.
God damn you, Skype. God damn you, putting us through all this. Oh, flipping hell. Anyway, yeah, so we're like 45 minutes behind where we would normally be. Okay, we're here to talk about, I'm not too sure if it's bad neighbours or just real neighbours. I think just real neighbours, because you can have good neighbours as well.
That's true. That's very true.
So, you can't really choose your neighbours. I don't think it works that way. Okay, how is your neighbour situation at the moment?
Well, on this side, he points behind him. On my left side, we have a lady called Carol and her daughter, who is lovely. And on the other side, the house is empty, which is also lovely, and has been empty for 2 years come the start of December, which has been fantastic, because before it wasn't nice.
Oh, okay. Okay, we'll get to that in a minute then, I'd imagine.
But then there's neighbours kind of out the back who have a yard, and that's another story.
Are they the dog neighbours?
They are the dog neighbours,
right,
yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, okay. Disclaimer, I think. I may talk about my neighbour now, just in case. Knowing my luck at the moment, someone will hear this, and if you are a neighbour and you are listening to this, number one, congratulations for listening to podcasts. Number two, I'm very impressed with that. Number three, please don't grass me up, for crying out loud. So I may tread a little carefully with certain neighbours. And may not.
That's probably wise.
Yeah, just it's bound to get back at the moment. The way that shit is flying around here at the moment. So, as it stands, okay, right, you're looking at me. So, over there, that neighbour who's joined onto our house, they're the new neighbours. They moved in December last year. Very nice couple. I've got a few issues. I'll leave it at that for now. Neighbours behind me, they're not attached. They're in like a thatched cottage, which I can see. But that means that we can't have fireworks in our garden because we don't want to set next door's house alight at all. But
well, not yet.
No, not yet. Well, I might get to that as well. But they, that, believe it or not, that is their second home. So they live somewhere else. And then they come over here to get away from the hustle and bustle of wherever they're living. So
is it come at weekends, or do they migrate with the seasons like birds?
It is like birds, but it's very sporadic. It could be in the summer months, they could be there all the time, or they might be there a couple of weekends and then disappear. And we don't speak to them because we don't know them, and I don't think they want to know us, which is fine because they park like bastards. But yeah, there's no rhyme or reason to how they come and go on their house. It's weird. And neighbours over that direction, they're the ones that got robbed recently. But they're fine. They're nice. And the neighbours to my left now, they're kind of getting better. Their kids have grown up and moved out, and that's when all the shit has stopped. So it's all dying down now. But I've had really good neighbours in the past. I've had really bad neighbours in the past as well. And you can't choose. It's like family though, isn't it? You can't choose your family. You can't really choose your neighbours unless... No, you can't choose your neighbours. Even you find your perfect house for you at that time and situation. You move in and they seem all right when you first move in, and then it could be something kicks off. You park in the wrong place, or you cut their tree down by accident, or kill their tree, one of their favourite trees, by accident because it's encroaching on your garden, and then they cop a strop with you, and then from then on, it's really bad. Or you could be the bad neighbour. I don't know.
Well, it's thing is, the other thing is you can move in and you can have good neighbours, but then they can move out and you can get someone horrible. I have to say, generally, I've been pretty good with neighbours until fairly recently.
Yeah,
I think I didn't know how lucky I was. I lived quite a transient lifestyle from being a student and then being a wandering bohemian bum, and moved out, lots of rented houses, and generally often don't stay more than 2 years. But what I say, mainly I was living in Lancaster, lots of old houses built with good, big, thick walls of Lake District stone.
Nice.
So you'd never hear anything from the neighbours, and so that was probably a good thing. It was when I moved back to Darlington, the first house I had a rented house, and I had neighbours both sides. We were generally pretty quiet, but one side, the side to the right, about once every 6 months, every 2 months, he decided he'd have a bender or something, and he would start about 11 o'clock just blasting out Bobbins music, deafening volume.
Yeah.
And it started to get more and more frequent, and I knew I was moving out. And one night, actually, literally, he kept the music been going till like 7 a.m, and it stopped. And I thought, well, I'm awake now.
Yeah.
If you think that's hard rock, you should see my record collection. So I gave it half an hour. I started with Trout Mask Replica, Captain Beefheart. We had some Spacemen 3. We had Jesus and Mary Chain, My Bloody Valentine, Napalm Death, Metal Machine Music by Lou Reed. Have you ever heard that? And that is just walls of feedback. And I turned the speakers to the wall where I knew his bedroom was.
Oh, brilliant.
And I did this all day. He wasn't very pleased about it for some reason. I was banging on the door to turn it out, but I couldn't hear him because my music was too loud. But he didn't do it again.
Yeah, that's the thing. Surely he should have known that, do you know what? I had my music on. I deserve this. And yet it's no. Yeah, so that's like getting your own back on Neighbours straight away, isn't it?
Well, the thing is, I could do it because the house the other side was empty at that time.
Yeah.
And otherwise, I wouldn't have done that because obviously you annoyed the person the other side who was an innocent party. So I was fortunate. It's very rare you're in that circumstance where you got that leeway to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, but then so I moved out of that, moved into this place. So Carol next door, lovely. There was a middle-aged couple living the other side. And I didn't hear them at all. You'd hear it occasionally, a hoover or a door shut, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was it. And then apparently, I don't know if this is true, this probably might be terrible gossip, but they had a falling out and he tried to strangle her in the kitchen. And she slung him out. Then she moved out and the house was empty for a while. And then it went to their daughter, who was just like 17 or something.
Yeah. And
her boyfriend. And they moved in and it was around Halloween. They had a Halloween party. Look, fair enough. Went on all night, but fair enough. You've just moved in. I can live with that. But then it was every weekend and getting rowdier and rowdier.
Right.
And then it was kind of, I'm going to have to do something about this. But you know what I mean? So you knock on the walls or you knock on the door and they just don't answer the door because it's a house full of drunk, chaffy teenagers.
Yeah.
But, then it was kind of, but then it was, I started getting sounds of fights. I mean, literally one night I was woken up, not just by, I hadn't slept much because of the noise, but then I heard what sounded like a wardrobe falling down the stairs and screaming. So I just rang the police, you know what I mean? So it's kicking off next door, come and sort it out. And that happened a couple of times. And then one morning I got up and found the fence between our property being kicked in.
Oh.
So, right, police, that's it. And so, then I started actually, because I was trying to find out who actually owned it to complain to the landlord, but actually it's pretty hard to find that stuff out.
Mm.
I mean, you can find out the owner on the land registry, which you have to pay for. It's not a lot, but it's a pain in the arse. But then you've only got a name, but no address.
Mm.
And so I was going through the phone book and was getting no joy at all. I went through all the possible names, but you know what I mean? You don't know. It might be in the wife's name, the husband's name. You just have a name and initial. It's a man or a woman on the land registry. So
yeah, you
know what I mean? It's quite hard to find. I mean, yes, it's on the council tax records, but you can't waltz up and find out easily.
It could always be in like a third person's name as well, couldn't it?
Well, that's it. It's it. And the council tax would only list the tenants, not the owners anyway. So, but the actual couple who owned it, they were actually the parents of the original lady who lived there, the middle-aged lady. I mean, they were really apologetic and just really, really nice old couple. And he said, he just actually works around the corner, actually, like he has like a decorating and carpet shop. And he said, any problem, just come round and speak to me and I'll sort it out.
Right.
And so, it settled down and it started to kick off again. And so I had to have a word and it settled. And it was fine for a while. But this is where it gets complicated because then she had a falling out with her boyfriend and he moved out and she lived there on her own and it was back to normal. You know what I mean? Kind of didn't hear a thing. But then one of her sort of gal pals moved in and the noise started again and the fight started again. I woke up, I heard broken glass one night and found like someone had thrown something through one of their own front windows. And another night, I had the police knocking on my door asking, did I know who lived there and where they are?
Yeah.
I'm going, what the hell's going on here? You know what I mean? So, I thought I'm going to have to go have a word with Grandad again here. And so he did, and he sort of, slung her out. Said, either she goes or you go. And so the granddaughter slung out a flatmate. And then peace and quiet came back again for a while. But then she got another boyfriend who she used to row with very, very loudly.
Jesus.
And also he had like a dog, which he kept literally penned up in a pen in the yard. And the dog used to just whine and howl all the time.
Oh.
And he didn't hardly let it out. He was just literally caged up, wandering around in its own shit. I found the RSPCA, and they were no use whatsoever, as they came round just on the morning where he'd actually just hosed it out.
No.
And they gave me shit, like I was a troublemaker.
Yeah.
And he was kind of, well, I've got photos, and they're not interested. I'm like, fine, fuck you then. But it did continue, and I kept a photographic record, and eventually I did get them because they went away and left it there for a week, and no one came back to that house to feed it. And so I called the RSPCA again, so you can listen to me this time.
Yeah,
we've got I've got a week's worth of photos. You can see this this 5 by 5 foot sort of space filling up with shit, and you can see no one's been there. The food bowl hasn't been moved.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And I told her, I gave him the owner's address because I mean he had said that they're not supposed to have the dog there, and but I got them, and he hit the roof when apparently it was still there, and the next thing, literally 2 days later, they turned up with a van and moved all the stuff out, and it's been empty ever since.
Man alive.
But it's one of those things. The thing with noisy neighbours, the problem is to getting it sorted is you have to have kind of regular trouble. In the last stint of that, the problem was it wasn't regular. They'd have a blazing row, and that was annoying and distressing, and you know what I mean. It sounded, and I did raise my concern with, with the landlord because I thought it was just getting bad, and it wasn't just for the noise. It was because I was, I thought I was going to be hearing an assault and maybe a murder, but you know what I mean? It's kind of, and it settled down when it kicks off again. And the dog situation was sort of kept under control a bit, but then it slid. And that week when they just fucked up, I thought, right, I'm having you now.
See, that's the thing. At what point do you step in? Do you mention anything? Do you even like nod and say, I heard that last night, or just totally ignore it at all? There's a really weird line that you have to follow in that as well, because you're living next to these people. You have to live your lives next door to these lives as well. And anything that goes on in their house is their right to do. But when it bleeds over to you guys, and you're hearing it, or it's affecting you, or you're feeling down because of it, then it has become part of your life as well. And you don't really want it, do you?
Well, no, the weird thing is, when I found it's kind of, the times with having parties every weekend, it was a constant. That was fairly easy to get sorted, because you go to the police, you go to the council, and the council can, say, we've had a complaint. They'll say, the standard procedure is for anyone that's having these problems.
Yeah.
Your local council does have a department, environmental health, that deals with noise and antisocial behaviour and stuff, and they'll ask you to keep a record for 2 weeks and give, note incidents, dates, times, and witnesses. And when they've got a fortnight, if they go, yes, we think you've got a case, they'll go and have a word with them and say, we've had this complaint, blah, 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 blah. You got a right of reply, but it's kind of, if you're up to no good, we will investigate, and we will have you. And the council will be very reasonable and try to, hear both sides, which is annoying when you're in the right. But it's obviously the shoe is on the other foot. You'd want them, not just to witch hunt you.
Yeah.
So fair dues. But the thing is, when it's an occasional thing, say like a blazing row in the middle of the night once every 3 weeks, or it's not even regular, it's very hard to do something about it, because it's just like a background thing. It's not regular enough to get a log or get the investigation sort of done, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's not every Friday night when the guy or the lady comes back from the pub and then they start having a row. You can't really pinpoint it. You don't exactly know when it's going to kick off for the next time, do you?
No, I mean, on the whole, it's less stressful, but in a way it's more stressful because you can't, it's hard to do something about, and it's kind of, you sort of let it slide, because people you naturally don't want to kick off, really, and don't want to have to go through this rigmarole of starting to complain and having these, issues with your neighbours. But it's difficult, though. I mean, it took us 2 years to sort out the other neighbour. mean, this is the saga. My neighbours being a saga. So yeah, I think I had 20 years where I had good luck, and then it sort of came to an end.
See, I think I've been pretty lucky on a whole. I think when I was living at my parents' house, and we had new neighbours move in on our right hand side, and it was a new couple. They'd just recently married, and they had 2 kids from her previous relationship, and they had 2 kids, one called Gary, one called Martin, and Martin, he was proper bonkers. Now, they were a nice enough couple and nice enough kids. And when I say kids, they were bordering on teenagers, and I was growing up with it. So I was maybe 1 or 2 years older than them, but I was in my teens. They were approaching their teens. And they were getting into oh yeah, we're going to start smoking, we're going to start drinking outside and stuff like that. But there were a couple of instances where you just think, hang on a minute. It's not that there was, I don't know, how do you put it? The kid wasn't on a spectrum. I don't know if that's like the nicest way to say it. He was just, it's really hard to put it. Okay, I'll give you a for instance on what he did on a couple of occasions. He went down our road and tied all the car exhausts together with string, and then sat at the top of the road with a lighter trying to light the string, thinking that it would go down and blow up all the cars.
Wow.
So that's... I don't know if he had a really big fuse or not, but he did it, and I remember my dad going out there and cutting the string because it was around his car exhaust, and you're like, flipping hell, man, that's just asking for trouble. He also did it to his stepdad's car as well, so I don't know where you go with that. He was caught attacking one of the neighbours' dogs. Where we lived, there was an alley in between the houses over the back, and he was down the alley attacking one of the neighbours' dogs with a scaffold pole, and he got into a lot of trouble for that. And one day, when we were kicking the ball out the front, as you do, he pulled down his pants and decided to do a poo on the pathway right outside his own house. And then he got a stick and put it in it like a little flag.
Definitely on some sort of spectrum, I think.
Yeah.
It's a behavioural problem.
I really don't know, but living next to that, it's so spontaneous as well. You cannot judge it. You don't know where it's going to happen. And
you don't know what's going to happen.
No, there's 3 prime examples of I don't know where the next thing is coming from. I don't know what the next thing could be as well. And their next door neighbour, they had a pylon in their garden. And I think he was caught once trying to climb up the pylon. And I think about 12 foot up, there is a ring of 4 rings of barbed wire to stop kids from climbing up. But nevertheless, he did decide, do you know what? I'm going to climb that. And he did get up to the barbed wire, but he got brought back down as well. But, how do you cope with that? I don't know. I don't know where we go with that. And they've moved on since. But that was just so random. Up until that point, we had a lovely guy who used to live next door to us called Larry. And he was a cab driver. And he lived on his own. And he was one of the nicest dudes you'll ever meet. He was so nice. He was proper. I know we weren't living in the East End, but he was a cabbie.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I think you can imagine how he would be. And he would bend over backwards for you. He would, if he saw you in the street, he brought me home once in his cab. He saw me playing around, I think in Danson Park, and he was, do you want to lift home? I'm like, yeah, okay, I've got a free cab ride home. It was brilliant. Absolutely diamond geezer. And then you end up with a family that just doesn't really know how to act. And it can be, it can be stressful. It really can be. But yeah, Martin, man, Jesus. It was when you was talking about certain things. I had a Martin living next to me, and we got twins living down our road, and okay, what have you had any experience of good neighbours at all? Because I've got an experience of wonderful neighbours where we used to live.
Well, last house I lived in Lancaster, I was briefly the bad neighbour.
Oh,
yeah. I was sharing hands with another guy. We just moved into this new place. We had to move out of another place because it got sold out from under us, and that was a flat above a shop, and it was in these stone-built Lancastrian terraces. You never heard anything from neighbours. We were at the end of the terrace anyway, being sort of above the corner shop. We moved in this new place, and that was fine. And it was Christmas, and he came back from going home at Christmas, my housemate, and he'd won in a pub raffle a home cinema system.
Oh,
and this was like 2003, 2004, when these things were still pretty pricey, and not many people had them.
Yeah,
it's a proper 5.1 speakers and the big subwoofer.
Nice.
Whoa, this is good. And you're watching all these DVDs on 5.1, and then so a couple of days after New Year, I had a knock at the door, and it was Pete, the man from next door, and he said, "I'm terribly sorry, but we're getting a bit of noise, I'm afraid." And it's like we were, oh God, really? And we were like mortified, you know what I mean? Because it's like, oh God, we're so sorry, because you don't realise the thing you find with 5.1 is that most things aren't mixed very well for 5.1.
Yeah.
So you have the volume up so you can hear people speak, but then you get an explosion, it fucking rattles the house. And obviously, the walls on this terrace weren't nearly as good. So they were getting a lot of the noise all the time, because we were playing music through and everything, going, oh, this is amazing.
It sounded really good when you stood in the middle of it, though.
But also, that house that knocked through, it had like a dining room and the living room being knocked through. So it was like a big long rectangle, and it was obviously big, that made it worse as well. But we were mortified, and you know what I mean, and we bought a couple of bottles of wine and bought his missus flowers because we felt really terrible about it, and just said, any time you hear if you hear a peep out of us, just don't hesitate, come around and tell us, because we don't want to you felt awful, Yeah. And but they were a really, really nice couple. We always chatted to him over the back fence, and we did have a few. That house was fucking shit, I tell you. Things kept breaking in it. And, literally, we had one of the taps literally just fell apart one day, and it's like, oh Christ, I've got a wrench. And so I went next door. Pete, we got a wrench. Oh yeah, no problem. He came and fixed it. You with us, and it was absolutely lovely. You know what I mean? They were lovely neighbours to have. The house was horrible, but the neighbours were brilliant.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things you knew, kind of likewise he'd knock on my door and ask, have you got this on the other? Oh yeah, no problem, And it's really nice. So I mean, it's nice to Carol. She's really, really nice lady. You know what I mean? It's like she'll take packages for us, and vice versa. You know what I mean? And you know what I mean? Never had any problems at all. And she's kind of nice to person to live next to. Should get along fine.
Yeah, that's what we got in our old house. We used to live in a terraced road, and there was two twin ladies. There was obviously sisters. Why am I even telling you they're sisters? They're twins. But they'd lived there all their life. I think they lived in, hang on, we were what number were we? I forget what number were we. But I think they lived in the second house along. And what they would do every Monday morning or bin morning, they would come down the whole road and drag everyone's bins out for them. You didn't have to touch them. They'd come out and they'd be really pleasant. They'd talk to my son. We only had our son at the time. They'd talk to him. They'd be really pleasant with them. You'd see them. They'd wave, and they'd both wave at the same time. It was really spooky, but they were always pleasant, always smiling. And it was weird because when we first moved in, we saw these two ladies coming down our drive or into our property. It was like, what the hell are they doing? Hang on, they're touching the bins. They're dragging the bins out. Hang on, they've done it to every other house down this road. And there were a fair few number of houses, and they would do it up to a certain point, cross over, and then do the other side, and then go in. And it was just one of them things. They would love to do that sort of stuff. And we didn't really talk to them much. It was just passing, pleasantries, hellos, how are you? Lovely weather, brilliant. We're going to go off and go in our house now. And that was really nice to see. And we didn't have any grief from them or any of the other neighbours, apart from one person who he was, how should we say it? How do we pleasantly say this? He would be your typical Millwall fan. Now, I don't know what springs to mind with that, but imagine a stocky geezer built like a staff, who had a staff, shaved head, gold chains, sovereign rings. Remember that? Yeah. Do you remember that Carol guy who won the lottery?
Oh yes, yeah.
Imagine that type of fellow, and he had the house at the very end of the street. And I think there was one World Cup where he painted his whole house white, and we thought, oh, okay, that's nice. He's painted his whole house white. Came home the next day, and there's a big St. George's cross painted, not just laid on top, painted on the front of his house. You're like, okay, this,
that's unique.
And you're like, I wonder if he's ever going to paint over it. He never did. But his mum would come along and look after his kid once or twice a week. And for some reason, I don't know if we had like the prime spot on the road, but she would always park in front of our house. Now, we had two cars. We had our car and we had my van for work. And when we first moved in, we were told, okay, right, you park there. That's outside your house. That's where you park. The van, you have to work it out somewhere around there. And I found a space where I could put it, and it always went there. It was a walk, but that's where it went. It didn't bug anyone. But for some reason, she would always park her car slap bang right in the front of our house. I couldn't work out why. Maybe it's because she didn't want to park outside her front of her son's house, because then his space is gone, and then didn't want to upset his neighbour, so moved down one. Didn't want to upset that neighbour because they're in earshot, and it just worked all the way down to my house. Oh, sod it, we'll stick it there. And you're like, oh man. And you'll find out throughout this, a lot of my beef is to do with parking. It just does my head in. But yeah, it's
a big problem now, though. I mean, it's kind of, I know a lot of people have a beef about parking because, most houses, in a lot of places, weren't built to accommodate one car.
Mm.
The average house, if there's a family in it, there might be 3 cars or 4. And that's a problem. I mean, even on some new estates, my dad's estate was built at the end of the 80s. It's a very plush estate, but the garage design they used was a garage from 1960, from when everyone had Morris Minors and Hillman. Most modern cars won't fit into it. And this is before we had the current trend for big fat ass cars that want to be Jeeps when they grow up.
Yep.
Before that trend, but even then, at the end of the 80s, it was still too big for the average 80s car. And if you could get your car in, you then have the problem of you can't actually open the door to get out. So people don't use the garages.
Yeah.
And most of the garages on that estate, they've been converted into like studies or conservatories or laundry rooms.
Yeah, they're not a garage anymore, are they?
That the big metal door's gone. It's all been bricked up. There's some windows in there. There's a side door.
Yeah.
You know?
Although my granddad had, he had a maxi, I think it was, and he had a ping pong ball hanging from a string, so he could drive his car in there. When it hit the windscreen, that was it. He could close the doors, and it was genius. When I worked out exactly why there was a ping pong ball in his garage, I thought, yeah, man, that's good. Always wanted one now. Always wanted one.
That's ingenious.
It's silly little things like that. I thought, yeah, I like that. And so whenever I do happen to get a house with a garage, might be the next house I buy, might be the house after that. But first thing I'm doing, I'm putting the car in there, working out where the ping pong ball goes. That's it. I'm going to be happy with that.
Oh, that's a proper top tip, that is.
That is. Oh, I would do anything just to see that again. I know exactly where that house is. I could drive down there now. But just for the fact of it, oh, man. It's just such a simple thing to do. But yeah, the parking, okay, the parking at the moment, this is just two old guys moaning about Neighbours now, isn't it, really? But
it's going to go that way.
Yeah. Listeners, if you was expecting anything else, you were sorely mistaken, because it was always going to be like this. But okay, where we live at the moment, we still have the two cars. We have the Amanda has her car and I have my van, and we can park down the road just around the corner from us, because we don't have a driveway. We're not lucky enough to have a driveway. There's a couple of houses up our street which have driveways, and they're becoming more and more. And so space is becoming more at a premium. And we can fit 3 cars where we park our 2 cars. And I always put my van in the middle, so I don't mind being blocked in. I can get in and out of pretty much any space. I've got no problems with that whatsoever. The problem comes when someone visits next door, and, you know, in inverted commas, visits next door. Not saying that it's happened recently, but it may have. And not that it's a rule, but they don't know that that is the situation. And so they just come along and, oh, look, there's the new house. We'll just park here. Slap bang in the middle of exactly where we park. And, you know, I turn up from work. Amanda's had to park on the grass out the front, which you're not really supposed to do. But when you got nowhere else to go, because you don't want to nick anyone else's space, because then you get in trouble with them.
Exactly. Yeah.
It just has a massive knock-on effect. And so I rock up from work. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake. And it's an unwanted stress that is always there. I'm driving home from work every day now going, I bet some fucker is parked in that space, just nicking it. And where certain people in our road have been having work done on their house, and I've got no problems in people having work done. Maybe they should have told us they were having a lot of work done that would last a year. That would have been nice to know. And when the builders turn up and then you've got nowhere to park, and they got a perfectly big drive next door that they can park the builder stuff on, or they have parked the builder stuff on and then they've put their car in the 2 places where you park your car, even though they know you park your 2 cars down there. You're like, just have a bit of common sense, have a bit of spatial awareness of what is going on around you, and don't just move in and think, oh, do you know what? I'll just put it there. It'll be fine. I'm not causing any problems. I'll park on my drive later. I don't give a shit. No, it does. For a person like me, that really bugs the shit out of me. I wish I could not be bugged by it. I wish I could just park somewhere else and just, do you know what? I'm not worried, because I'm worried about nicking someone else's space and screwing it up for someone else.
Well, it's a domino effect. That's the problem. And I mean, the only solution is have residence parking. You know, where you have a permit for so many vehicles to park outside your property.
Yeah,
and a lot of spaces. And then, I mean, it's unpopular because whenever it's been implemented anywhere I've been in the country and spoke to people, on one hand, it solves the parking problem, but it also tends to end up costing you an arm and a leg every year to pay for these things. And it costs extra if you want a visitor's permit. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like, but at the same time, I mean, I imagine it's the same everywhere, but, you know, there's a lot of streets, particularly in Britain and in towns all up and down the country, that weren't designed really to have cars driving on them. Never mind cars parked outside them.
No.
You know, some streets are like a slalom. And, I mean, where my sister lives, the people next door to her were perfectly lovely, but the husband's got a car. He's got a little sooty van for his work. They have 2 kids that live at home, and so they've got 5 vehicles. And sometimes there's 6. I think the dog has a car of its own. You know what I mean? And they're just spilling out down the street, and it is kind of like, you know, no. I mean, we need to address these sort of problems because it's a narrow street anyway. You know, it's like, you know, you have to weave in and out, and cars have to stop and let each other pass because there's so little room for all the parked cars clogging it up now.
Yeah,
it's just kind of like we need to rethink this whole car situation because it's now out of hand.
That is one thing I'm really, really worried about, because my boy's 15 now, and we're getting to that stage of it's
2 years for a license now, isn't it?
It's just in the future. It's just there. He can almost touch it. It's a little bit out of reach, but the old cogs are okay. In a couple of years' time, I'll be driving. Okay, so that's a 3rd car. That doesn't mean that there's one less space in my street, because we have friends over the road who my boy goes to school with. So that's 2 cars at minimum. And then you've got all the other families in the village as well. And God knows how many there are. So that's going to have a spill. Some will move on. Neighbours will come and go. But we do have a problem. I'm seeing that problem, and I want to kind of address that before it kicks off. That's why I really need a house with a drive. I'm not asking for an in and out drive, although that would be lovely. That gravel, brilliant. That sweet crunch as you drive your Rolls Royce up to the front door. I'm looking forward to them days. But yeah, there is going to be a problem very soon. And I don't want to be part of that problem. I'm sure nobody else wants to be part of that problem as well. But like you say,
we're all stuck with it.
And,
yeah. I mean, I say it's my dad's pet hate. I can't go anywhere with him before he starts up about it. And he's very definite ideas about it, particularly about vans and work vehicles parked outside houses, which you get a lot of because, you know, it's kind of, I don't think they should have been off-site, those vehicles, those liveried vehicles.
Yeah.
But they are, you know what I mean? Where my mum lives, there was an issue with someone who obviously delivered things for Argos and used to bring the lorry home and back. Not a full-size lorry, but, you know, like a big, like, sort of removals truck sort of style.
Big enough, like the Tesco's vans at the moment.
Yep. Yeah. And it's kind of, I'm not sure that should be parked in a residential area. I think that should be back in a car park somewhere, shouldn't it, where it's looked after. You can't be asked driving to work to pick you up every morning, can you? No.
Exactly, yeah. And it's cheaper for them to drive it home as well. So,
yeah.
But then again, up the road from us, well, in our road, we have a van very similar to that. Well, 2 vans very similar to that size. But they're not outside my house. They're not causing me a problem. And they've been there before we moved in as well. So really, I don't have any right to really moan about that. I will always try to work around what is already there. I've always tried to do that because I don't want to be that dick. I'm sure I have been that dick many, many times. But I try my hardest not to be that dick. And I think that's the problem. At what point do you know that you're the bad neighbor? That's the thing.
Well, it's one of those, I think, kind of, from talking to people about bad neighbor experiences, I think kind of they fall into 2 categories. You get kind of the people who just sort of something minor, like over a hedge, will become a bone of contention, and it becomes a point of principle. I mean, so with my third, fourth saga of the Neighbours, at the back of me, one of the houses further 2 doors down has this big yard, which is full of all kinds of weird crap. Right. Literally, it's like sort of workshops that aren't workshops. They were originally old laundry buildings, and they've got lobster pots on the top of that. They've had a boat in there. They had an ambulance in there for a while. They've got a digger, and because it's a really big yard, and it's all overgrown to buggery. And one day this digger appeared, and they dug this big hole and the big mound of earth, and then that was it.
Oh,
why? What are they doing? But they had a dog that was in this yard, and it always used to bark when you passed the main gate, and that was the case from since I moved in, and that was fine. However, at some point, they appeared to have stopped living in that house, and the dog was out all the time. And then it started barking all the time. Because the dog, for attention, and it wasn't just barking when it heard a noise and doing its job as a guard dog. Now it would just hear a noise, it would start barking, then it wouldn't stop for like half an hour, and it started doing it during the night, and so I kind of knocked on the door several times. There's nobody in that house. There's no lights on. You know what I mean? It's just there's nobody there. Put a note through, nothing. So I had to call the council, and you had to do the logs, blah blah blah, and then the council got in touch, and that they tried to claim it wasn't their dog. It became this bone of contention, even though it patently was their dog. But it was their attitude seemed to be, well, it's our yard. We can have a dog in it if we like. We don't hear it, so it's not a problem. But of course you don't hear it. You're not there all day. You know what I mean? It shuts up when the time the young guy, the son, used to turn up and feed it, and that was it. It would shut up then, obviously. But the rest of the time, it was going mental. It was just literally. We had he went back and forth with the council, and the council got the statement, and they said, we'll serve a noise abatement notice on you if you don't shut it up at night. And so they used to keep it in at night, which was good. So it wasn't, going off at 2:00 for an hour, 4:00 for an hour. But the knock-on effect was it was still being left all on its own, and it was getting more and more mental. And literally, as soon as they let it out, and he'd turn up in his van, go into the house, blah, blah, blah. The dog would come out, he'd go away, the dog would hear something, it'd start barking, and then it wouldn't stop for literally hours. Constantly. So you could hear it was getting hoarse. And we had this whole back and forth between the council, and they were claiming it wasn't their dog, they didn't have a dog, all these just bullshit excuses. And eventually, we got recording equipment in, and the council served a noise abatement notice on them, which then they appealed. So it should have been shut up in February this year.
Yeah.
But it went to, they put in this appeal. So it continued. I had another 6 months of barking, and it was due to go to court at the end of July. and we had more recording equipment in, and I got literally the machine filled up, the hard drive on it on the last day, and it shut off.
You shouldn't really do this to a podcaster, though, should you? Because
no, this is I got video of it. I had my own recordings of it, which unfortunately they're not very admissible in evidence. It's in evidence because you could tamper with them, apparently.
Yeah,
which I think is a bit of a bullshit thing, to be honest. Especially these days in digital recording with timestamps. The camera I had, which I got his dog barking on when it was left out during the blizzards earlier this year, that's not only time-stamped, it's GPS stamped.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of, I think that's pretty admissible. But
yeah.
Whatever. But then literally a couple of days before I was to go to court, they backed down and they dropped it. And they actually then took the dog off the premises. But it went that far, and I think it was only the fact that when his solicitor saw the evidence the council had, the solicitor said, "Fuck off! I'm not taking this to court because I'm going to look a right fucking Joey, trying to defend this bullshit." You know what I mean? And probably wasn't terribly pleased that this guy said, "Oh, we've got a case here, blah blah blah. We're being persecuted by the council," and all this rot he'd said. And, then he gets the evidence because, obviously the solicitors get all the evidence in. And it was kind of like, I just imagine him just sat listening to hours and hours with his dog barking.
It's a good job you don't have the skills to take that track and layer it up 7 or 8 times and make it seem like a pack of dogs.
It's one of the, it drives you nuts, but it's one of those things I just couldn't understand, what was the problem, almost, it's kind of, if it was my dog and it was just barking literally for hours on end till it was hoarse, I'd be a bit concerned. But it's that thing, it was kind of, I think it was just a bone of contention that they felt some macho territorial rights had been breached. Should be allowed to have a dog in my yard. And it didn't, any other facts didn't matter. You know what I mean? He was prepared to go all the way. You know what I mean? And it's just kind of like, because the actual guy who owned the house, who I've never seen for years, he accosted me in the street one day before he went to court.
Really?
Yeah, he did. He stopped me in the street, and I wondered who the hell's this guy? Never seen him before. Well, I'd seen him before, but only very rarely.
Yeah.
And then he was going, "I think you're making this up," and blah, 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 this and that. I said, "It's all on tape." And he says, "Oh, it's on your tape." I said, "No, it's on the council's tape." "No, it's not." And he's going, "Suit yourself." I just had to walk away and just say, "I'll just see you in court."
Yeah.
He just wasn't going to listen to a word I say. I was just trying to intimidate me, saying, "Oh, I'll have you up there. My solicitor will tape. It's registered in the witness box." Fucking, it's not Crown Court, This isn't It's pretty hard to argue with, like literally hours and hours of your dog continuously barking. You know what I mean? I mean, I had a live camera feed. I'd recorded several hours that morning out in the snow, barking its head off. And I was quite prepared to go, "You go to court. I'll have my tablet with me." And I'll just open it up, and I'm quite confident the dog will be barking, and I can play it to them live.
Yeah, it's happening right now.
But, people just get these bees in the bonnet about they've drawn their line in the sand, and you know what I mean? That he was prepared to go all the way with it. And it's just kind of like, well, why do you think, just shut your dog up?
Yeah, just, if you've got a dog, look after it a bit better. This is why I think, dog, you should be given a license, or should have a license, hold a license, or maybe not take a test or anything like that, but be accountable and be proven to look after these animals.
Well, the thing is, this dragged on for like ages and ages, and I looked online at all different various solutions.
Yeah,
and you find, there's an awful lot of people on forums who have this problem, and it's always the same scenario. It's someone who just thinks having a dog means you've bought a dog, then you go, "I don't want it," so you just leave it in the garden or your yard, and occasionally feed it and just let it do what it's like. And that's normally go mental and bark all the day.
Yeah.
And, they just don't care. And
that's so unfair.
It is. Because, there's people, I sort of saw so many people sort of talking, going, I want to kill that dog. I want to kill that dog. I don't want to kill the dog, really. But I'm just frightened. One day I'm going to snap and I'm going to climb over that fence with a spade and brain it. And I totally know where they were coming from because I was at that stage. You know what I mean? I really was going to, and I'm an animal lover and a pacifist, but it was kind of like I was thinking, take your head off one of these days.
That's the thing, though. I'm
too much, and people have gone to court, and that has happened.
And
really, they have actually beefed up the laws for antisocial behaviour and bad neighbours. They've really actually have toughened them up in the last few years. But for this case in particular, and it's something I am going to actively pursue with my MP and any local councillors, because so many other people have this problem. It's a simple solution. You're not allowed to keep dogs outdoors in a residential area. End of. You know what I mean?
So
nope.
They don't have that on the continent, though, do they? Because I don't think they do, because where my father-in-law lives now in Spain, when the sun goes down, the dogs come out and just bark. And they will bark from sundown until, let's say, 3-4 o'clock in the morning, when they've just worn themselves out through barking. And it's just constantly. And you lay in bed, you're like, do you know what? It's really bloody hot. I'm having trouble sleeping because of the heat. And because of that fucking dog that just keeps barking. But you got to remind yourself, you're in a totally different country. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
And that's what they do. And I think after a little while, I got used to it. I knew when it had roughly died down, and so that I could go to sleep then. But it's just the way different countries work in different ways as well. But I used to have problems with the neighbour across the back of our house, and they would just let their dog out, and I think that's like a little Westie, or was a little Westie or terrier, and it was just yapping, yap, 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 yap. And I can do so much of that up until a certain point where it just, okay, take your poxy dog in. I'm all for letting your dog run around, but there's a point where, okay, please stop. And then when it's trying to nip you through the fence because your son has kicked the ball underneath the tree and I've got to get it and it's trying to bite my fingers, that's dogs. And it's not the dog's fault. The dog's just being a dog. And it's not really the owner's fault because he's just letting me out. It's just annoying. It's just one of them annoying little things.
Well, it's one of those things. It's bad dog ownership because, it's the dog is being feral and territorial doing that. You know what I mean? And it's kind of, and when dogs in the wild don't bark.
Right.
So only domestic dogs that bark, which is interesting. Yeah. It's because it's something they've developed to communicate with us. In the wild, they don't bark at each other. That they will snarl and growl if there's a fight, and they have like warning howls. But they don't just at every passing thing. It's something they've picked up from us of trying to talk and try and conquer us. And so when a dog's barking, it's shouting for a human. And so when people leaving dogs out in the garden, if they're just going mental and barking all the time, they're distressed. There's something bothering them. They want sometimes it's attention because they're pack animals. And that's a lot of the problem with barking dogs is the fact the dogs are left alone. And anything they hear, it's not so much. Sometimes it is like, you're on my territory. I will destroy everything. I am the king badass dog of the world. Yeah,
don't come near my grounds, etc.
Most of the time, though, actually, it is they've just heard something and they've heard humans, and they're saying, "I'm in here, I'm in here, I'm in here."
Ah, okay. Right, I was unaware of that. I was totally unaware of that. I wonder.
It's really interesting because I didn't know that. What do you mean they don't bark in the wild? But it's kind of something. These things you learn when you're up at 3 a.m. and typing in how to kill a dog. full of other people who have underslept and slowly been driven mad by barking dogs.
You're on a list now. Yeah, okay, maybe that's what the dog next door is doing, because our ex door neighbours, I like to call them, they moved out December last year. They had a dog called Bracken, and I don't know what it is. I don't know what it was. It had wiry hair. Imagine the worst taxidermy you've ever seen on a tiny little dog with mangy hair. It's got wire for hair. But that taxidermy has come alive and can run at you with 3 legs. And he's just a vicious little sod. He was. And he would protect that house and he would bark at me. And it was, oh, please stop barking at me. I'm in my garden. I'm walking to my house. We got a joint pathway up to our house, but you've got a fence in between you. And he would do that. And then one day, I think just after our cat died, about this time last year, he passed away. And we had this lovely month of nothing. I would walk in. Granted, I didn't have a cat anymore, but they didn't have their dog. It was a sad time. But it was also a nice time of walking up my garden and no one barking at me. No one yapping at me. No one having a go at me. And then we got new neighbours. And they brought their dog. And now that barks at me as I'm walking up my driveway. I'm like, oh, please stop barking at me. And it's like, rap, 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 rap. And the dog we're fostering at the moment, he's got a bark. He's got a proper bark. He's a proper dog. He buries bones in the garden. He works like a proper dog does. This thing yaps. And it's one of them annoying yaps. You're like, you're not really barking, are you? You're just here making noise. It's like the version of a 3-year-old kid screaming in a supermarket. That's all it is.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah.
I do have one other thing about next door neighbours, and now this doesn't apply to me. This was my sister-in-law, and they had a house. They had a council house at the time, and they used to park in like this close where all the houses went round in a big square, and they needed a driveway built from the square to their front of the house because they needed disabled access to get into the house for their young child. And they put in planning permission, it all went through, and their neighbours stopped the planning permission on the grounds that they would be losing too many spaces around the square. And this went, I think, I'm not sure if it went to court or not, but it went higher up. And my sister turned around and said, no, look, we park our car there. Where we park our car is where we want the access, so you're not losing any spaces whatsoever. And they kept fighting and fighting and fighting. They ended up losing, but then end up losing a neighbour as well, because then it was just bitter rivalry because, hang on, you wanted me to stop taking my child up to the door to help with her just because you might lose a space in this big close. And it's just, there's no need for that battle. Why is that battle required? I don't understand it.
I guess there's lines in the sand that people will draw, and then once they've drawn them, they can't back down.
Yeah, I got into a bit of a debate with her once because we looked after their house and I had music on and it was not very loud at all. I promise you it was not loud at all, but I got rinsed by that woman. And yeah, I never spoke to her again. But personally, I don't think we've ever had like loud music problems, real loud music problems. I think the worst person for that was Amanda's dad. When we were teenagers, he'd come home quite drunk and put Pink Floyd on at the loudest volume and then fall asleep to that in the front room. And he would open the windows and it would go throughout the whole street. And if we weren't in the house, I would have found that really annoying. So I'm glad I didn't live next door to him.
A friend of mine, a guy he used to work with, was very much an aging rocker. Quite hardline as well. He didn't really rate any music past 1985. Like a proper sort of late 70s, early 80s.
Hair out rocker. To there, all frizzy.
Yeah, big moustache, you know what I mean? In the denim with the patches.
Beautiful.
Frozen in time. Nice guy. Lots of funny guy. But apparently my friend Gordon often used to go drinking with him because he lived out of town in a little village. And he found that this guy, I probably shouldn't name him. Let's call him Frank. When he got home, he's like nothing better than to do very, very much similar. You crank the volume up and open all the windows so everyone else can enjoy it in the street. And it's kind of like, deafening volume. I'm just chilling out, man. And Gordon's going, it's like, it's a bit loud for 2 a.m. No, it's fine. This is a quiet track. It's an acoustic number. How do you know what it is?
Let me get my experimental CDs out. But there was many times when he would put his music on loud, open the windows, and I suppose the way that their house was situated, their front room didn't link with any other houses, so it wasn't going through the walls into a neighbour's house. There was a gap in between the houses, and on the other side they had their hallway, so that would link to the next door, but they had a hallway, so you had 2 rooms in between their front room. So that was something of a saving grace. But there was one night we remember finding him in the rocking chair, totally asleep, glass of wine in hand, and I think Amanda was looking after her sister's gerbil. And the vibrations of that music, we think, ended up killing that gerbil. Because she was looking after it and it would go into this little hole and curl up. And the music was so loud, and it was a case of, no, just one more. Just turn it up a little bit more. Just turn it up a little bit more. Just turn it up a little bit more. And we checked on the gerbil in the morning. Yeah, he was stone dead. And we all think it might have been to do with that music, just reverberating through the floor.
Probably. Or even that the constant sonic onslaught terrified it, because their hearing's a lot more, sensitive than ours.
Yeah. I mean,
I know like cats, apparently, they can literally hear, like a pin drop 200 yards away. Literally, it's that sort of, sensitive. They can hear a conversation in the house at the end of your street. And so imagine like things like gerbils, which are the natural prey of cats, have got similarly good hearing to hear the cat coming from 200 yards or 800 yards away. Full blast mid-70s rock for several hours would probably give it a cardiac arrest.
Yeah, that's what.
If nothing else.
That's what I'm sure that's what we thought at the time. It was like, yeah, I think you better look at this. You may have killed your daughter's gerbil. Oh, okay. No, that wouldn't have done it. I was putting on really good songs. No. Don't think it works that way at all.
If only it did, though. That would be handy.
Yeah. Okay, so to maybe bring this to a close then, what would be your recommendations either for new neighbours, or how would you recommend other people treat their neighbours or work with their neighbours?
I think you can't really go on with the golden rule. It's kind of, if the shoe was on the other foot, how would I like it? I mean, I know, sometimes you've had a few drinks, you might be tempted, to get out that old CD and rock out one last time, crank it up to 11, but then think, it's Tuesday and 2 a.m. How would I like to be treated to Queen's greatest hits at this hour in the morning as much as I was Freddie Mercury? I think, well, maybe that's not a good idea. Would that annoy me?
Yeah,
I think that's what you have to live with. I mean, I think yes, Englishman's home is his castle, but the walls ain't always too thick. I mean, even if you have a completely detached house, you can still have a noisy neighbour problem. Because, modern sound systems, you can generate an awful lot of noise. You can be very annoying with, giant liandly sort of hedges and massive monstrous conifers that completely eclipse the sun. Do you really need a 4x4 just to do the school run?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, do you need 6 of them as well for every day to park down the drive? But you got to have that sort of bit. It's like living with sharing out with anybody. You have to be prepared to compromise. You know what I mean? It's kind of, yes, it's a free country, but there are consequences to your actions.
Yeah,
I think most people are fairly reasonable. I think it's when you get that line in the sand drawn, and then the positions solidify. If you know what I mean, and then it can start to bubble into just warfare, and any shreds of tolerance disappear, and any little thing is more fuel for the fire. Yeah.
Well, I think that situation where I had where the fence was ripped down by some little rotter in the village. Our new neighbours, he came over, trying to catch us off guard, I think, and to try and sort out the situation as quickly as possible, which is fair enough. They got a dog and they don't want it running around. And for anyone that doesn't know, we had a fence ripped down when my boy had a party. It wasn't the kids' fault. It was some twat trying to gate crash it and then decided, do you know what? I'll just rip down their fence to get back at them. And the neighbours didn't take too kindly to that, blamed the kids. It was proven not to be the kids, but I had to fork out and put a new fence up. But he kind of did draw a line, but in a very subtle way. Not, I'm going to put a horse's head in your bed or anything like that. It was, we don't really want to fall out about this. But so if you could really, sort something out and discuss it with us later, that would be great. And I was like, okay, I can feel that finger going in that line and drawing it. I understand what you're doing here. Don't worry, I will sort it out. And I did sort it out as soon as I could. So I did the neighbourly thing, paid half of it. I did all the work, and he didn't get round to painting that fence. And so now it's swelling in the winter. So what a dick.
Karma can work very fast these days.
Especially in the British weather, yes.
But the other thing I would say is a little goodwill will go a long way. To spoil oil on troubled waters. So with the first set of them I was talking about, after the first fence incident, they both came and apologised, and we got on fine after that. And I mean, it was probably a good 9 months. And they did want to have a couple of parties, but they came and asked me. And I said, yes, yeah, that's fine. And I did have music all night, but I'd agreed to that, so that was all right. You know what I mean? I could make arrangements. You know what I mean? And that was quite fine. It's only when they split up.
Yeah.
And the new personnel came in later that it kicked off again. But just the fact that they actually did apologise and say, it worked out fine. We exchanged Christmas cards even and chatted. You know what I mean? But it was just because that kind of, all right, we fucked up. it was like, fine, you know what I mean? It's kind of, I can't hold a grudge.
Yeah.
You know, I'll be a reasonable man. And like I say, just a little thing can diffuse a lot. That's my other takeaway from bad neighbor situations.
Yeah.
And so if you're in that situation, you can pull it back from that DEFCON 1 sometimes.
Yeah, I haven't reached that yet, thank goodness. I don't think I've ever been that close, but yeah, I think helping your neighbours out as well, even if you've had like shit go on, just agreeing to do something and sometimes backing down when they think they're in the right, you're like, do you know what? Okay, hands up. I just don't want an argument. I can't be asked. I spend 2 days out of the 7 days in my own house. The rest of it, I'm at work. So I'd rather not argue with you over these 2 days. Just backing off a little bit. And so I try and do my fair share of backing off. But if I think I'm bang on right, then I might push it a little bit. But yeah, I think you're right. If you wouldn't want it happening to you, if you wouldn't want the loud music at 11 o'clock at night on a Friday, then maybe don't do the music at 11 o'clock at night on a Friday night. I think that's the best way to go. And just be mindful of where people park, people's routines, and don't get in the way, because they have to live next to you as well. And they have their own neighbours that they have to live next to. So yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult, but fingers crossed it won't end up in burning houses and anarchy at some point.
Not those feuding families in America, the boys and the I can't remember what the other ones are, but famously that this feud, and it ran for hundreds of years, of these two families who had neighbouring farms who were just taking pot shots and fighting a guerrilla war over several generations with each other over someone said something about somebody's hat or something ridiculous. I can't remember how it started, but never could they, probably, you know.
You're bred into a house where you hate your neighbours, but you're not sure why you hate the neighbours. Brilliant. God bless America. Okay, right. I think we should draw it to a close there. Thank you very much for joining me, mate. That's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Cool.
Good therapy.
Yeah, definitely therapeutic. Do you have anything that you'd like to plug for these lovely people?
Yes, you can catch me every week on my own podcast, Hypnogoria, which you can find on iTunes and Stitcher and any other places good podcasts are served. By the time this comes out, I'll be just gearing up to have my famous Christmas episodes. And you can also catch me on my other show, newly launched, which I do with my good lady Teresa, Commentary Club. And the next episode, we're doing an experimental one. We've got a blind commentary for a film neither of us seen. I'm going to be watching Sharknado.
Wow. That's going to be immense.
We've got a lot of wine in. I'll put it that way.
I was just about to ask if you got a lot of wine. And lots of Class A drugs as well, I hope.
I need them, I think.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's going to be brilliant. Cool. You can also catch myself and Jim on the Black Dog Podcast, so please pop along to blackdogpodcast.com, and all the episodes are there. 370 odd episodes, I think it is now. So
get to 400 eventually.
Yeah, it'll come round the corner, and then it'll just be Darren going, oh, nearly 500. Got another 2 years of that, really. So yeah, pop along to the blackdogpodcast.com. Also check out Grand Prix Podcast, the Great Derelict, the bOrgcast, maybe. What else? What else do we have?
Dave Probant's The Happy Place.
Yep. Danny Davies and all of his drawings and stuff like that. Check all that out. That's all in the show notes. The Flix Capacitor, check that one out as well. I'm recording a new one next week, so should be good. And anything else, pop along to the Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/Shonky Lab, and you can find all the times that we're going to be recording next time out. So until then, thank you very much for listening, And please leave quietly. This is definitely a residential area.